Tonight, extradited. US fugitive Nicholas Rossi has left Scotland. He's been flown out on a private jet to face rape allegations in the States, ending a bizarre 2-year saga.
Also making the headlines, a family call for a public inquiry after their mother died of asbestos-related cancer, despite years of complaints to her council landlords.
We were angry and we knew pretty much straight away where that exposure was likely to have taken place.
A disappointing end to the year on Glasgow's High Street, with latest retail figures showing a slump.
And the Rocky Horror Show gears up to take to the stage in Glasgow for a 50th anniversary special. I'm Gordon Cree in Edinburgh.
And I'm Courtney Cameron in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6.
Good evening. The American rape suspect Nicholas Rossi has been extradited from Scotland to the United States after a long-running legal battle. The 36-year-old, who's wanted by authorities in Utah, left on a private flight from Edinburgh this morning.
Police Scotland confirmed it assisted partner agencies with the extradition. It comes after appeal judges quashed Rossi's bid to stop attempts to send him to the US to face rape and sexual assault charges. Our chief reporter Shannon Frew has the latest.
Confirmation that Nicholas Rossi has finally left Scotland brings to an end a bizarre 2-year saga here that began with an arrest in a Glasgow hospital and repeated claims of mistaken identity.
Sharon, we're sitting having a conversation. I've never been dead to anyone. I do not prefer to be called Arthur Knight. I am Arthur Knight.
While out on bail and sitting beside his wife, the man arrested as a COVID patient repeatedly insisted he is an Irish orphan, an ill man caught up in a conspiracy.
This is a vicious lie. How can I be a flight risk if I can't even stand?
Months of drama, denials and delays followed, with Rossi attending court throughout in a wheelchair, despite a prison doctor's evidence that she could find no medical reason for it.
Court rise.
After a sheriff ruled on Nicholas Rossi's identity, the Justice Secretary signed an extradition order last September. The American appealed. He even represented himself, making claims that he would not receive a fair trial in the US because he was investigating those seeking to extradite him. Judges dismissed these arguments, agreeing with the previous sheriff that the case was straightforward and there is nothing to stop Rossi being put back on a plane to the United States.
We're pretty pleased with what happened with the courts in Scotland, that he's going to be brought back here, mainly because the alleged victim in this case will have an opportunity to be heard and for justice to be done.
Nicholas Rossi is believed to have used multiple aliases. His DNA and fingerprints were added to a national database after he was convicted of assaulting a woman in Ohio in 2008. These key pieces of forensic evidence would later link him to a Utah rape case, leading to an international manhunt. In his home state of Rhode Island, the 36-year-old is also known by his birth name, Nicholas Aliverdian. By the time this elaborate obituary was posted in 2020, it's believed Nicholas was already living in the UK, leaving behind him a string of criminal allegations and debts. Distinctive tattoos helped to identify this fugitive in Glasgow. These are the pictures from an Interpol notice shown to nurses before his arrest in December 2021. Rossi later claimed he had woken up from a coma to find his arms had been tattooed.
I knew this day would come. I didn't think it would take as long as it did. But the long arm of the law, the old saying, will get you, because this is really about the victims. Everything he's done to them. So I'm glad you're on your way back, Nick. I can't wait. I may fly out to Dayton, Ohio, Utah, wherever you're going to go, and watch your trial.
Spinning a story with so many twists and turns, Nicholas Rossi has found himself the subject of numerous podcasts and documentaries. It's now over to the American courts for the next chapter. Sharon Frew, STV News.
The family of a woman who died from exposure to asbestos in her council house have told STV News they want a public inquiry. Christabel Grant's family won a landmark legal case against West Lothian Council after she repeatedly reported the presence of the lethal substance in her house in Linlithgow.
Lawyers are warning it's only a matter of time before more tenants are pursuing legal action because of asbestos-related health complications. Vanessa Taff reports.
Happy birthday to you.
We miss her hugely. My children, her grandchildren, who she absolutely doted on, are doing things without their granny that they should have been able to share with her.
Over the course of 40 years, asbestos was falling from shelves in Christabel Grant's pantry onto pots, pans and circulating in the air around her home. She was diagnosed with peritoneal mesothelioma, a rare form of cancer, which took her life.
We were angry and we knew pretty much straight away where that exposure was likely to have taken place. But of course, my mum was a very proud and loyal council tenant and didn't really want to have to bring them to task and was concerned at the reaction from the council.
This is the first known case in Scotland where someone has died from asbestos in their home. It was widely used in building works in the 1980s before being banned in the 2000s because of its harmful effects. Lawyers are warning the Grant's family landmark legal case is just the tip of the iceberg.
Unfortunately, much of the damage will already have been done, and we may well now see over the coming decades tenants like Mrs. Grant being affected by domestic exposure. There is still the potential, in fact there's a very real potential, that they will not be successful in their claims because they weren't aware, they didn't raise the issue with the council, and the council probably have a fairly likely defence to say, well, how were we to know?
This company deal with and identify asbestos in properties across the country. They survey and remove the material which can be present on walls, roofs and around pipes in homes.
So I've seen loads of asbestos, especially in the council estates, housing association properties. You can find 60 to 70% in almost flats, all the flats. And that's low risk, but same, it needs to be treated as a hazard material.
Christabel's family want the Scottish Government to launch a public inquiry into the level of asbestos in homes. The Scottish Government say all health and safety executive guidance is followed when planning and carrying out asbestos removal. Until then, the Grant Family campaign is just beginning, but they want to save others from the same fate as their beloved mum and granny. Vanessa Taff, STV News.
The First Minister is calling on the UK government to put pressure on Israel for a ceasefire in Gaza. Hamza Yusuf wants Hamas to release its hostages, but says Israel has gone beyond a legitimate response. Our political editor, Colin Mackay, joins us. Colin, why is the First Minister speaking now?
Well, Hamza Yusuf was the first Western leader to call for a ceasefire, but over the last couple of days, things really have escalated. In the last 24 hours, the Israeli Defence Force say they hit 100 targets, and the Gaza-run Health Ministry say 162 people have been killed. Now, the First Minister's wife's mother and father were there at the start of the war. They still have family in Gaza, so he still very much has a personal stake in all of this.
They should immediately call for that ceasefire, because we've had, according to the Gaza Health Ministry, over 22,000 men, women and children be killed in the last 90 days. Of course, thousands of children have been killed, 1.9 million Gazans internally displaced. That's more than the population of the city of Glasgow, city of Edinburgh put together. And it is a catastrophic humanitarian disaster. And I don't know how much more worse it has to get for the UK government to do the right thing and call for an immediate ceasefire.
You still have family in Gaza. What's the situation like for them? How are they?
Well, Nadia's brother is still there. Of course, he's a hospital doctor. Her stepmother is still there. Her elderly gran, who's 93, is still there. I'm afraid the last contact we had with them was yesterday. They told us that the Israeli tanks, were a few kilometres from their house, and we've not heard from them since.
Some strong words there. What reaction has there been?
None at all. The Scottish Conservatives say this is a matter for the UK Government. The Scotland Office and the Foreign Office have made no comment whatsoever on the First Minister's words tonight. Neither has the Labour Party. But the real test of diplomacy will come over the next few days when the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken flies into the Middle East for more talks with the real players in this conflict.
OK, a lot more to come on this, Colin, but for now, thank you.
Now, residents and business owners in Fife say they're being left counting the cost of Storm Gerrit with no offer of Scottish Government support funding. They say they've been left treated unfairly as people impacted by October's Storm Babette have already claimed more than £350,000 in cash designed to help them get back on their feet. A similar pot hasn't been created this time, as Lewis Mickey reports.
As many continued to enjoy the Christmas period on the 27th of December, residents in Cooper and across other areas of Fife were being hit by Storm Gerrit. Mohammed runs a shop here. It sustained hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of damage after the nearby river burst its banks.
At the moment, the insurance have refused a payout because it's flood, then they call that a natural disaster. The whole of the shop has to be gutted out and redone again. We're looking between £250,000 and £300,000 to redo to start business again, really.
Homes across the river had to be evacuated by the fire brigade.
I've been in my house 27 years. We've had problems with the burn. Obviously last week when it flooded over, it's flooded all of the 4 houses over here. So now everyone's out homeless, very worried. I mean, we had to come out in dinghies with the fire service, and the houses are ruined, they're done.
Today the water levels on the River Eden are about twice the level that they would usually be, and that's with the weather fairly tame. So you can imagine how the river can quite quickly become overwhelmed when the rain's battering down like it did on the 27th of December during Storm Gerrit. Financial support has been offered to those in Angus and Aberdeenshire impacted by October's Storm Babette. There's frustration the same help hasn't been extended to Fife after the latest storm.
They're the ones that are homeless without all their Christmas presents and possessions. So that's why I think the government really does need to step up, provide the funds for people in Fife in the way that they provided them for people in Angus. The impact on them individually is just as much.
The Scottish Government says support was required due to the exceptional nature of Storm Babette, and say crisis grants are available for those eligible from the Scottish Welfare Fund. But that may not be enough for people like Mohammed, counting the cost of adverse weather. Lewis Mickey, STV News, Cooper.
Other stories now, and 2 people have been arrested in connection with the death of a man outside a pub in Edinburgh. Mark Webley was shot while leaving a Hogmanay party at the Anchor Inn in Granton and later died. A 39-year-old man was also injured and taken to hospital. Those arrested are a 32-year-old man and a 25-year-old woman.
Calls to an NHS helpline about psychosis symptoms have doubled, with more than 10,000 made last year. Figures from NHS 24 show that while overall calls have declined, those about alcohol issues and psychosis have surged. The Royal College of Psychiatrists described the numbers as hugely concerning. The Scottish Government says it's committed to improving mental health services.
More than 1,300 teachers have quit the profession within the first 5 years of their career since 2018. Responding to a Freedom of Information request from the Scottish Liberal Democrats, the General Teaching Council for Scotland said 1,337 teachers had left the register. The Lib Dems say schools should be properly resourced. The Scottish Government says £390 million from the new budget is being invested towards protecting teacher numbers.
To other stories in the West now, and the family of a Rutherglen grandmother murdered just days before Christmas have set up a fundraiser to help with funeral costs. 61-year-old Anne Call died following a violent attack at her home on the 22nd of December. Police are still appealing for information. Her family have raised over £6,000 so far. 2 men have been charged in connection with the attempted murder of a 29-year-old man in Bonnybridge. Police were called to the incident on Duncairn Avenue in the early hours of the 23rd of December. A 24-year-old and 26-year-old appeared at Falkirk Sheriff Court today. They made no plea and were remanded in custody. A Jet2 flight from Tenerife to Glasgow was forced to make an emergency landing after hitting birds. The incident took place shortly after takeoff on Wednesday evening from Tenerife South Airport. Jet2 said passengers were transferred onto a replacement aircraft and flown to Glasgow. A drop in footfall across shops last month rounded off a drab end to the year for retailers. That's the message from an industry body who say the number of people in stores was down by over 2% compared to last December. Impact on sales is yet to be assessed, but experts warn early indications are concerning. Here's Brandon Cook.
January sales meant Glasgow's main shopping thoroughfare was relatively busy this crisp afternoon. But figures show it's often quite a different story. Throughout the crucial month of December, footfall in shops was down 2.2% on 2022. Experts are blaming persistent stormy wet weather and ongoing spending caution from consumers, with the ever-evolving reliance on online shopping never far behind.
Personally, I enjoy the exercise and seeing the bargains in store that sometimes you don't get when you're shopping online.
It's just easier. It's easier buying it from the comfort of your home, not having to go out. Sometimes it's like the worry of like not having the right size or the style that you want, so it's just easier buying online.
We're of a generation where the shops were always there. Online's brand new. It's for our kids and our grandkids.
Overall, the figures show a third successive monthly decline. Glasgow slumped by nearly 10%. Only the capital bucked the trend, with an increase of nearly 6.5%. We'll need to wait until next Tuesday to find out whether December's lower footfall has translated to lower sales. Early indications are that it has, and that's potentially damaging news for retailers ahead of what's traditionally a quieter few months.
Clearly, many retailers, particularly those who are not in food, need a good Christmas trading period to weather the next few months and tide them over, a period when shopper footfall and retail sales tends to decline. And at the same time, of course, they have to meet bills, whether that's for rent, rates, increases in pay and so forth. So whether we'll see casualties over the next few months remains to be seen, but it's a very difficult and sticky period for retailers in Scotland.
It's been a difficult start to the year for many shops following what should have been their busiest period. Retailers will be hoping that demand improves as inflation begins to ease. Brandon Cook, STV News, Glasgow.
Sport now, and while there's no Premiership action this weekend, still plenty to talk about, Jamie.
Yes, Gordon, and we start this evening with some bad news for fans of the Edinburgh clubs. Good evening. Injury blows for both Hearts and Hibs tonight, with key attackers ruled out for the coming months. Hibs midfielder Josh Campbell is facing 3 months on the sidelines after injuring his ankle in the Edinburgh derby, and Hearts winger Barry Mackay was hurt in the same match. Scans on his knee have revealed Mackay will miss at least 6 weeks while he recovers. Willie Collum will take charge of his first match since the VAR controversy in the Old Firm derby in tonight's championship clash between Queen's Park and Dunfermline. The referee was at the centre of a war of words between Rangers and the SFA after claims the Ibrox club requested Collum never take charge of one of their matches again. The association immediately rejected that request and says Rangers should take more responsibility with regards to officials' safety. Staying with the Championship, and Partick Thistle boss Chris Doolan says his players have the quality and character to close the gap on the top two. The Jags are third, 9 points behind Raith Rovers in second, with Doolan insisting the squad are focused on securing automatic promotion to the top flight.
For me, it's always looking up. You know, I don't think you get any benefit in looking back the way. In football in general, I think if you continue looking over your shoulder and looking back the way, you tend to go back the way. So for us, we constantly look up the way. We'll constantly look to try and catch the teams above us. We know it's a tough ask. We know that there's gaps appearing all over the place.
As the Women's Scottish Cup enters the third round this weekend, Glasgow City head coach Leanne Ross insists her players are hungrier than ever to lift the trophy. City have won the Cup a record 9 times and face Rossvale at Petershill Park on Sunday.
Any competition that we enter as a club and as individuals, we want to win. There's so many winners in my dressing room. So when we go on the park, regardless of who we play or what competition we're playing in, they're going out there to get the win. So Sunday will be no different. It's obviously the early stages of the Cup, but it's an opportunity for us to get back out there and to get down to business again. Obviously looking towards getting back to the league the following week as well.
Laura Muir says she has mixed emotions after being awarded a retrospective bronze medal for a race she ran almost a decade ago, as the winner was disqualified for doping. The 30-year-old says it was very difficult to miss out on the 3,000-metre European indoor medal in 2015. But after a reallocation, Muir says it means so much that athletes who compete within the rules are being rewarded. Rugby, and Poppy Fletcher says the introduction of Edinburgh and Glasgow's women's teams for the first ever time has been bigger than expected for the players. Fletcher scored a try as Edinburgh won the first ever intercity fixture, and she hopes it's just the start as they compete in the Celtic Challenge.
They made history in front of more than 1,000 fans. Scottish women's rugby took a giant step forward with last weekend's inaugural match between Edinburgh and Glasgow Warriors. And the scale of the occasion wasn't lost on 19-year-old prop forward Poppy Fletcher.
It was pretty monumental. That felt like the biggest game I've ever played. And I've been to 1872 Cup games for years and years and years. And to have the first women's team, to be playing in the first women's team, I don't know, just to have a crowd, and it was just class. It was like magic. It was way bigger than expected.
Teams aligned to the country's men's pro rugby outfits has long been mooted as a way to encourage the growth of the women's game. Fletcher says that progress is being made.
I was one of maybe 2-3 girls that wanted to play rugby at the school, so we sort of set up our own team. When we didn't really get numbers, we trained with the boys, and that was just, I think that was the same for most girls. We were mascots for one of the Edinburgh games, and that was just a mind-blowing moment for me, but I couldn't relate to any of the players, because they were all men. I didn't think we'd come this far to now be playing under the Edinburgh team name with the support of the men's team is pretty amazing.
Fletcher starts on the bench as Edinburgh continue their Celtic Challenge campaign at home to the Irish Wolfhounds tomorrow.
Just finally, a great draw for the Scotland cricket team in the upcoming T20 World Cup. They'll face England and Australia this summer. That's all from me for this evening.
Thanks, Jamie. Well, now it's time for a look at the weather forecast with Sean.
A breezy morning will be followed up with a flurry of fresh delights for lunch. TUI sponsors STV Weather.
A very good evening to you. A fairly decent weekend to come, especially during tomorrow. A lot of dry and bright weather. We've got some scattered showers still out there through this evening tonight, mainly across the Hebrides and down the west coast of Argyll and Bute and the Highlands. Temperatures for most of us, 4 or 5 degrees along the west coast where we hang on to the showers, but cold and frosty, especially as we head further inland, and the possibility of some mist patches developing, a little bit slow to clear into tomorrow. But as I say, tomorrow we've got light winds, a dry, bright day, so a very usable day. A few scattered showers still continuing along the west coast, but for many of us it will be a fine day. Now, as I've been saying this week, temperatures are dropping as we head through the weekend. Our daytime values this week have been about 7-8 degrees Celsius, around average for the time of year. Tomorrow we take a step down to 4 or 5 degrees, so it will be feeling a little bit chillier, but as I say, dry and bright. Now, a lot more cloud around on Sunday, and I expect around Glasgow and perhaps Renfrewshire we could hang on to some mist and fog patches right through the afternoon, and where that does linger it will be very chilly. Temperatures probably about 2 degrees. So there we are, Glasgow, possibility of that mist and fog lasting throughout Sunday, and some chilly nights ahead as well, but a lot of cloud into next week, but it should be largely dry. As you would expect as we head further north, some even lower temperatures here. Tyndrum, for example, one of our chilliest spots next week. I expect we could get overnight values around -3 to -5 degrees. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors STV Weather.
And finally tonight, it's the 50th anniversary of hit musical The Rocky Horror Show. And to celebrate, the show is taking to the stage at Glasgow's Pavilion Theatre on the 30th of January for a week.
Yes, actor and former Strictly champion Joe McFadden will star as the narrator. He's been telling Laura Boyd all about that and reflecting on his early career in High Road and Taggart.
It's astounding!
Let's do the time warp again as the Rocky Horror Show comes to Glasgow's Pavilion Theatre with Joe McFadden set to star.
It's the 50th anniversary tour and this cast are better than any cast I've ever seen do it before, and I've seen the show many, many times. Playing the narrator is really good fun because you are at the mercy of the audience. The audience have the script that they'll shout out all these shout outs all night. But I imagine it's going to be a bit wild in Glasgow. I mean, I know Glasgow audiences, so I know it's going to be wild.
Joe always loves coming home to Scotland, where he landed his first role in, of course, Taggart.
These gentlemen are from the police in Glasgow. I want to know where you were last night.
It was my first job at 12 years old, yeah, and then got an agent at the ripe old age of 15 and got into Take the High Road, and sort of just kept working over the years, which is good, yeah.
What does it look like? You're talking to Gary MacDonald, entrepreneur.
The actor has gone on to star in everything from Heartbeat to Holby, as well as winning Strictly Come Dancing in 2017, with those moves coming in handy for Rocky Horror.
How's your time warp?
Time warp's okay, actually, yeah. I am doing it in heels, which is slightly more interesting.
Laura Boyd, STV News, Glasgow.
And that's all from us for tonight and for this week.
Have a lovely weekend. Good night.
Bye-bye.